Well, we have quite a bit of weather going on tonight across the U.S. We are looking ahead to tomorrow in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states where we could have thunderstorms with severe weather. And there's some severe weather tonight going on in the northern plains. And of course, there's still flash flooding going on in that tragic event that occurred this weekend in central Texas. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And if you'd like to support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, you can do so by doing your Amazon shopping by using our referral link that's pinned to the top of the chat board. And it's also on the description to this podcast underneath the title on YouTube. Just search and shop for your stuff. Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there. It doesn't cost you 1 cent out of your pocket. And it's an easy way to make sure that the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, or at least the live version of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which this is, would be commercial free. So thanks to those of you who have shopped our Amazon referral link. And Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link for this is also on the description of this podcast under the title. Use the coupon code SUMMER2025 because if you do, you get
10% off.
And that's on anything you buy off the Tempest website because they have all sorts of goodies. Okay, so we are back after a 4th of July weekend and a 4th of July where the weather, at least for you, and even here too, I mean, it was perfect. The one upside with Tropical Storm Chantal was the fact that for where it was, Joe, it actually funneled down some drier air here. So it wasn't terribly humid and it wasn't terribly hot either. And of course, front and center for the last day or two has been this god awful tragedy that happened in central Texas with the flash flooding.
It's a very sorry situation down there, and a lot of people have been talking about it, and a lot of people have been wondering what went haywire. And the one thing that I think the major point, the major concern is that a lot of this happened in the wee hours of the morning when a lot of people were asleep. The National Weather Service did their very best with what they had to issue advisories and warnings, but unfortunately, the warnings that were of the greatest concern were posted at around 4 o'clock a.m. Eastern, not Eastern, but Central Daylight Time. And like I said, a lot of people didn't know about those warnings because they were asleep. They were not. And this is one of those occasions where a weather radio, especially the type of weather radio that issues a loud siren or a loud noise or a tone when there's a major warning or advisory that's posted, the radio goes right on. It's kind of like an alarm clock. And certainly if you have one in your room, your bedroom, that would have woken you up and would have alerted you to the situation. However, Joe, looking at it from another point of view, the Guadalupe River, I mean, that thing went up like at the rate of like 2 feet per minute. There was something like
It was crazy.
24 foot rise in the water level in less than 20 minutes time. So even if you were to be awakened by your weather radio and told, evacuate, obviously, unless you immediately ran out of your house and left everything behind, you were going to have a problem because this situation just evolved so tremendously fast that it was very difficult for many people to escape. And like I said, most of the people who lost their lives probably were asleep when all of this was transpiring.
Well, there's a couple of points that I would like to bring up, and you might agree or disagree with this. And I'm sure you've been reading up and you've seen some things that have been flying around all over the place. Let me just start off by saying, I don't know. I saw a number of people that were happy that this happened. They used their perverted their perverted politics to and state that they were glad that these people were killed, and the vast majority of them were children. And I would just like to say to those people that you are probably the lowest form of humanity that there is. You are vile, disgusting. I won't even call you a human being. That your politics are so wrapped up in your inner soul that it's turned it black. That you can look at something like this and all you see are the obsessive politics of your that inflame your life. And I mean, I don't even have pity for you. I just don't. You're just horrible excuses for human beings, and you really just need to go bury yourself in a hole someplace. Really, Joe, it was some of the stuff I read was truly disgusting. It really was. This was a horrible, horrible thing to have happened. And looking at it, just let's lay that aside now. I got that off my chest. Let's just kind of look at this and just take a step back. This to me is just one of those things that when you think about the Titanic and you say, what if this didn't happen, or what if they had turned the ship a little bit faster, or all sorts of what ifs that could have prevented the tragedy. And yet it seemed that all the events and all the decisions that were made ahead of it just sort of cascaded into this tragedy, and there was no way to avoid it. This was an act of God. It was an act of nature. It was a catastrophic event, and that happens. I mean, the weather world, sadly to say, that this sort of stuff happens from time to time. You hope it doesn't, but the reality is that it does. And the first attack is to throw the National Weather Service under the bus, and also to say it's all about the weather, the staff cuts, and all the rest of it. So, if let me just straighten. If you're thinking that that's what this was, um, all the Weather Service stations, from what I have read, were at full staff this weekend in that area, and all the surrounding local offices. Everybody was working. Flash flood watches went out. Were out a couple of days before. Flash flood warnings went out. The flash flood emergency warnings went out. So the Weather Service did their job, and did it well. You're not going to, the models did, from what I've been seeing, did a good job in pinpointing areas of heavy rain with some exceptional rainfall amounts. Granted, they didn't all show like 30, 40-inch rainfall amounts, but they certainly showed the idea of a mega event occurring. And then I also was reading about the fact that um, the town, the taxpayers of the town, decided that they didn't want to spend the money to put in a an alert system
Right,
in the town.
Rob Kelly, who was the Kerr County judge and is the most senior elected official in that particular area, was interviewed after, in the aftermath of the tragedy, and excuse me, he said that the county did not have a warning system because, and I'm quoting here, such systems are expensive, and local residents are resisting to new spending. Taxpayers won't pay for it. So when he was asked in the aftermath of the tragedy now, will they reconsider all of his comments and do invest in a warning system? You would figure that the guy would say, "Oh, absolutely, we learned our lesson," or whatever. But he simply said, "quote um, I don't know."
Well, maybe
So
he doesn't, maybe he doesn't know at this point. I mean, we're still in the early days, and I'm sure we're going to get more information going forward about what went wrong with disseminating the information. Uh, I, 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 I can, I can say, again, from stuff that I've read, and I've gotten so to the point where I'm so skeptical about anything that I read or see on TV. Um, CNN to me is a vile channel because they immediately right from the get-go, it was all about the cuts. It was all about the budget cuts. I mean, that's what they went to first. That was the first thing that was on their mind. Let's make this a political statement, and it's really sad. It's just disgusting. But that's what they do. I mean, they're just horrible. They're just horrid. Um, you know, it it's a camp, and apparently, I mean, I really didn't know anything about this camp, but apparently, it's very well known. A lot of people go there every year. I wonder. There was some speculation about the fact that cell phones they didn't have their cell phones while they were camping. Other things I also saw was the fact that that's a that's wide open spaces there, and I can tell you here in Georgia where I am, there are spots where I go through in the mountains where you can drive for 10, 15, 20 miles and you don't have any cell service. So, they may even had, maybe they all had their cell phones and they just don't have the service there. Because everybody that's got a cell phone is going to get the flash flood warning on their phone. I mean, there's just a lot of things here. There are a lot of puzzle pieces that just need to be sorted out. And I just hope everybody just kind of sits back and takes the time and not be among the Facebook experts that are out there who have the answers to everything. Whatever the issue is, the event is, Joe, they're all, during COVID, everybody was a doctor. Okay. During the tariff stuff, everybody was a trade expert. You understand where I'm going with this. I just kind of, I'd like to get some more information about how this all um, plays out. I just, one other thing I do want to point out also, and I think this goes to the psychology of when you're dealing with this sort of stuff as with what we do. You and I have both been in situations, when we've had the catastrophic rain event with Ida, which was well telegraphed, and that the all the politicians knew because they were told the day before, and of course the next day after it happened, they denied that they knew that anything was going on. Okay. And they tried to throw the weather service under the bus. The governor of Maine tried to throw the weather service under the bus when they had their catastrophic flooding. Was a year or so ago. So I mean, we're kind of used to this, but it gets old. It just gets old to be the first ones to be attacked when you go out there and you do your job. But I just want to read this one thing from uh, Marshall Shepard. If you don't know, Marshall Shepard is a former president of the American Meteorological Society, and now he's the head of the meteorology department at the University of Georgia. And he makes this one point about what we would call normalcy bias. This area in Texas is known for its flash floods. It gets them all the time, and uh, he talks about this. This is a classic case of, and I'm quoting here from a post on Facebook that he put up. This is a classic case of normalcy bias. I heard almost the exact narrative from officials in Houston after Hurricane Harvey. I co-authored a recent National Academy report on compound disasters. One of our findings is that people have benchmark storms from the past in their minds that may have hindered their preparation for current or future events that may be more intense, stronger, or more frequent. Normalcy bias is a huge challenge. I saw it recently in St. Louis with tornadoes. It's a region that experiences warnings so often. So normalcy bias and a little bit of optimism bias affects decision making. In other words, it's sort of like saying, well, when the next hurricane comes up the East Coast, you're going to see a lot of people that are going to say, well, we went through Hurricane Sandy and that's as worst as it could be. So this one probably won't be as bad. I mean, that's the psychology that sort of goes through people's mind. And I think that's that's certainly a valid argument in terms of how people in general react to all the different warnings that go out. Um, that they sort of think back in their heads and say, well, we kind of went through something really, really bad, so it doesn't sound like it's going to be that as bad as that, so we'll be okay.
Well, it's something similar. You mentioned Marshall Shepard. Something similar, a similar statement was issued in the last day or two by James Spann. And we've had James on our Joe and Joe show, a legendary figure down in the southeastern United States in Birmingham, Alabama. He's been on down there for many, many, many years and is a highly reputable, highly respected weather forecaster and media personality. And James Spann said, this type of flash flooding on the Guadalupe River is nothing new. Similar events happened in 1998, 1987, 1978, 1935, and 1921. This year's event, this most recent event, was related to deep moisture from a tropical system, a storm that was in the Pacific, actually. Tropical Storm Barry that came inland. We talked about this on our show in the last week or so. It originated in the East Pacific, made landfall near Tampico, Mexico on June 29th, and
Well,
all
it
of
became a
that,
tropical storm on the Atlantic side in the Gulf of Mexico.
right, and
Yeah.
all of that moisture came swirling northward into indeed the area around the Texas area, Guadalupe River, and he points out also that social scientists will do much research on this in the coming weeks and months and years. In my opinion, he says, this is again James Spann's opinion, one of the primary problems is the high number of false alarms, flash flood warnings that are issued with only minor flooding involved. And this is also a problem with tornadoes in many parts of the country. So, what he is alluding to is there may have been many people the night before who went to bed and they said, oh, yeah, we're under a flash flood alert. Oh, okay, no big deal. They're always putting those up and it'll be wet. We'll have some puddles out there. They had no clue that this was going to evolve into the dangerous situation that it did until just before it happened at, like as I said, 4 o'clock in the morning local time. And who was listening at that hour? Nobody. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, one good thing to have, one takeaway from the importance, is having a NOAA weather radio in every home, every business, and any place where there are large numbers of people gathered, like in this particular case, a camp of young children on a river. You would imagine in such an area like this, Joe, and you mentioned about cell service, you using your iPhone, and sometimes you don't have any signal. It is indeed in such a situation like this, spotty, if not at all in terms of cell service, especially where these camps were located. But
Yeah.
the National Weather Service radio does not use cell service. And again, if you have one of those devices with the alarm in the proper position, if you have it activated, so that if they do issue a major alert, that alarm, and I can assure you, I've got one here. Maybe I can even bring it out and demonstrate. It'll wake you up. The alert is very loud and cannot be missed. So, again, as James Spann points out, we're going to be looking at this from all different angles as to what went wrong or how it went wrong. And he's right. I think psychologically, people, if they hear these kind of warnings and advisories issued, and it happens a lot down there, heavy rain, thunderstorms, and everything else, flash flood advisory, flash flood warning,
All
they're
right.
doing it again or whatever.
Well,
But this
and
wasn't.
there is also again, he brings this up because he put up a series of points. He he um, he says, "Is it time?" He asks this question: "Is it time to reconsider the location of facilities along flood-prone rivers in Texas Hill Country? This will happen again. The region is situated in hilly terrain, receives a lot of Gulf moisture and remnant tropical systems." I mean, this is nothing new. And the infrastructure question. needs to be addressed. Were there any infrastructure failures or flawed engineering assumptions that amplified this event? And he says a UGA, University of Georgia colleague often talks about how stormwater design assumes stationarity, not accounting for the fact that the floods in 1960 will be different from those in 2025 and beyond due to the climate and paved surfaces and buildings and so on and so on and so forth. We have to start to really think about the fact that you can't be building in places that have 100-year floods every 10 years. I mean, you just can't. Or you can't be, building on the coast when with that in hurricane prone areas.
Well, unfortunately, people, there are realtors out there who want to make their money and or have built and will continue to build big hotels, major population centers right along, let's say, the east coast of Florida, in spite of the fact that there is the potential threat of major hurricane activity, especially in August or September, making landfall there and causing tremendous damage. And there are people who want to go to the to interact with wildlife, who want to get away from the urbanization and want to be in places where out in the wide open, near creeks and near rivers and that kind of thing. Which unfortunately, in some cases, we saw this last year with the hurricane that devastated western sections of North Carolina, high up in the hills. There are people up there who live up in those areas, and it is very, very difficult to get to these places because they're, quote, out of the way, so to speak, and makes it more difficult for rescues and more difficult for, in the aftermath of a disaster to
Right.
build back up again. So, but these are things that people want. They demand. I want, and unfortunately, they don't think about it. Or if they do think about it, they say, "Well, that's not going to happen for a long time. I'm not concerned about that.
Well,
What
it's
if why
kick the
do I need to
can.
be
You just
concerned?"
kick the can down the road. That's what they always do.
Yes,
Just kick
exactly.
the can down the road to the next person. Um,
And incidentally, you mentioned the thing about Ida, and I've mentioned this before with the politicians going after us, the weather forecasters, in the aftermath, in spite of the fact that with Ida, there were warnings about 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 inches of rain falling in parts of the tri state area. When was the last time you heard of rainfall totals possibly in the 4 to 8 inch range with any one particular weather system? That rarely ever occurs. It did occur that time, and still the politicians came after the weather forecasters. The
right.
main problem in New York, in the tri-state New York area, when we get major flooding like that, is not the forecast. It's the infrastructure. We are working with incredibly antiquated and arcane infrastructures instead of trying to fix the
It's like over
infrastructure.
100 years old.
Right, right. Make it create better drainage in such cases. No, but we're still living with a system that was built back in the 1910s and 20s, and that's not going to help when you
No.
get 4 to 8 inches of rain in just a few hours' time.
Sean Stallings on the chat board. I'm going to correct you. So take it well. The Weather Service was not shut down in Texas. Okay, all the offices were fully operational. They were all at full staff throughout all from a from a few days before. Flash flood watches were issued. Flash flood warnings followed. Flash flood emergency uh, uh, statements were issued after that. The warnings got out there, but because of where these people were and that it was a very isolated area with not a there's no cell service is spotty at best. Uh, they may or may not have gotten the information, or maybe some of them did get the information and decided that it wasn't anything to be serious to worry about. That is a fact. So just just again, don't go jumping to conclusions because the Weather Service was doing their job, did their job. Okay, so just putting it out there. Brandon Doherty, thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight. And T Snowy 23, also thank you very much for hitting the tip jar. And welcome to everybody on the chat board after the 4th of July holiday weekend, which I hope was a good one for you. We're here, Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m., although we weren't here yesterday. So subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And if you like the show, of course, by all means, hit the like button.
And
All right,
global
so
climate change, by the way, probably does indeed have a say in this. As I mentioned earlier when I read James Spahn's commentary on this, he said flash flooding on the Guadalupe River is nothing new. It happened in 1921 and 1935. And then, and I'm talking about substantial flooding, kind of like what we just had last week. I mean, it floods out regularly on the
yeah,
Guadalupe River, I'm sure. But I mean, when you talk about like 20-foot, rise in such a very short interval of time, that's the situations that stand out. 1921, 1935, and then we went through apparently a long stretch where we had nothing even approaching that until 1978, and then all of a sudden, 1978, 1987, 1998. Now, all of a sudden, starting in 1978, it was happening. It's happening more frequently, but yet, and here's the interesting thing: the last time apparently it happened along this magnitude was 1998, and now it happened this year. That's not a 1 in 10 year average. That was over 25 years ago, 27 years ago, when we had the last tremendous rise in the water during a flood situation. Now, whether it's going to happen another 25 years from now along the Guadalupe River, it's going to happen again. Whether it's going to be 10 years or 25 years, nobody really knows. But again, it does happen. It has happened. It will happen again along the Guadalupe River. And basically, if you're gonna build camps and if you're gonna have people go down there, especially during the summertime when they get lots of flooding, lots of heavy showers and convective activity, thunderstorms that can drop a lot of rain in a short time. If you're going to have that, then you have to improve. It's kind of like what I just said about New York. Here in New York, they haven't done a blankety blank thing about the infrastructure.
right.
Every time we get a heavy rainfall, it floods out. Do something,
Right.
fix it.
And
And
again, just
drainage.
also,
And
and just also,
along the Guadalupe River, if you know that this can happen, and it has happened, and it will happen again, do something about it. Either try to make for a better means of controlling the river, or at the very least, put up those alerts, put up those warning sirens or whatever. Find a way to do it, because if it happens again, the same thing is going to happen like we just saw last week.
yeah, and again, this is not like a this is not like a metropolitan area that got flooded. This is a very rural, isolated area. You've ever driven across Texas, you can go hundreds of miles and not really pass much of anything other than, driving in a straight line. It's flat and you see nothing but sand. I mean, that's just kind of how parts of Texas are. Now, this area is very wooded. It's a place where people go camping, vacationing. It's not close to San Antonio. It's not close to Austin. These are isolated, quote unquote isolated, undeveloped, mostly undeveloped counties. You got, where it's not in the hill country there, away from the hill country, you probably have just, big farms and that sort of thing. So, I mean, this is not like it's a metro area. So when you go there, if you're in there, it's just like I said earlier. And when I drive through the mountains here, which I do every day, there are spots. Um, there are some places where the spots are just literally, maybe a quarter of a mile, but there are stretches of road here where you drive for 10 or 15 miles or more and you've got no cell service whatsoever. So, it's not, it's not something that's not, this idea that, we're in the 21st century and there's cell service everywhere. There are places where it is scant. So anyhow, let's just move on. We have what looks like tomorrow is going to be for Eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England is a a steam bath of temperatures in the low to mid 90s, and the Storm Prediction Center has upped the ante a little bit with the severe weather risk for tomorrow.
Right, they've advanced the area for a slight risk, category 2 on a scale of 5, a bit further north. Originally, I believe all we had was just a category 1 marginal risk, and then they added the slight risk earlier today, and then they've actually moved that a little further north over the last few hours. But yeah, but one thing about tomorrow, Joe, is that I think that any severe weather or any potential flooding conditions likely is going to occur during the afternoon, after, let's say, 2 or 3 o'clock. Actually, we do have a few showers and scattered thunderstorms in our vicinity right now around the tri state area and especially points west, but they probably will fade out during the next few hours. And we may actually have a bit of partial clearing toward daybreak. We may actually have, some folks may wake up tomorrow morning with a little bit of sunshine. And the first part of the day tomorrow probably is going to be dry. But as the air warms up, and it's certainly very, very humid, and of course, we do have the residual effects, the remnants of Chantal, which will be lurking just offshore, all of that coming into play to provide the impetus for showers and thunderstorms developing or popping up in the afternoon heat tomorrow and into tomorrow night. And again, with so much moisture, dew point temperatures at or above 70, you
Oh
can
God, I saw
bet
the
your,
dew points on some of the forecast was like around 74 or 5 for tomorrow.
I mean, like this is the
It's
kind
gonna
of
be
situation
brutal.
where all you need is just one single cell of precipitation, and that rain will come down. Well, we just had this a few nights ago. I remember the last time we were on, which was on Thursday, I had pointed out that we had a downburst here at my house in Putnam Valley, and I commented that we had something like 2 inches of rain that fell in a matter of just 15 minutes. I said that translated into 8 inches in 1 hour. Now, of course, it didn't fall. We didn't have 8 inches in 1 hour. Shortly after the 15-minute time frame, the rain very quickly petered out. But still, rain can come on down that heavily, and that could lead to immediate flash flooding anywhere. And that is what we're going to be up against over the coming days ahead with dew points so high, 70, as you mentioned, Joe. Tomorrow, some areas forecast to have dew points of 75. It's going to be like squeezing a very wet sponge if you happen to be in the path of one of these cells of heavy precipitation tomorrow.
By the way, one thing I just want to add to just to go back real quick to the Texas thing was the Anthony Orr sent me a message about the fact that apparently some jackass was flying us decided that it would be a good idea to fly a private drone in and that area is now restricted airspace because of what's going on, and it apparently got tangled into some helicopter that had to make an emergency landing. So if you're one of these drone players, use your head, okay? Um, you don't need to be sending drones over there. Um, I just got the
Or as, or
radar.
as, or as, or as Forrest Gump said, stupid is as stupid does.
Yes. There are some strong thunderstorms going on in parts of upstate New York, between Syracuse and Albany, and then also up the Northway into northeastern New York, and a line that extends down, cutting across the middle part of Pennsylvania, and some stronger cells to the west. There's some scattered leftover stuff over parts of New Jersey and the Hudson Valley. Most of that is just winding down from what was going on earlier, where there was some heavier rain and thunderstorms in southeastern Pennsylvania and in central and southern New Jersey down into Delaware and eastern Maryland. But that area has pretty well weakened. We are still seeing a little bit of rain in that area in Texas that got hammered, but now it seems to have moved to the south. Uh, a quick flash flood warning went up in that zone, but has now been taken down. We've got some scattered showers and storms in the Gulf, but widely scattered stuff. Also in South Florida, an area in southern Illinois, another area in northeastern Oklahoma. We've got some severe weather going on in parts of South Dakota and Nebraska, and also into northeastern Colorado. That's where we have severe weather risks for tonight, which I'm going to get to in a moment. I just want to go back to the satellite loop, which you see a lot of lightning strikes tonight, but not much going on right along the immediate coast. I think tomorrow that will change. There's an upper low of some kind east of the Bahamas that's producing some scattered showers and storms, but it's a cold upper air feature. The Hurricane Center is not really mentioning anything about it, and it doesn't really look like it's doing very much. Just sort of plodding along very, very slowly to the west. The Storm Prediction Center, let me back up for tonight. It has there's enhanced risk from northeastern Colorado, northeastward through Nebraska into eastern South Dakota. You have a marginal risk from Maine down through upstate New York, central and western Pennsylvania. Then it kind of swings down into the lower Ohio Valley, swings west across Tennessee into northern Arkansas and southern Missouri, and then goes back up into that expanded area in the central and northern plains. A tornado risk there now, just a wide area of 2% tornado risk. And for tomorrow, SPC's got a slight risk from eastern Virginia up through New Jersey, just not quite to New York City, and covering much of eastern Pennsylvania and down into Delaware, Maryland. We'll see if they wind up stretching this a little bit further north and maybe further south. The marginal risk going down to South Carolina, and then another area of marginal to slight risk across the southern plains. For day 3, it's a marginal risk from Maryland and Delaware down to South Carolina, and a marginal risk from Nebraska up through the Dakotas. Now, as far as rainfall is concerned for the next 7 days, we're looking at 2 or more inches from central New Jersey south and some 3 to 4 inch amounts in Delaware, Maryland, eastern Virginia, eastern North Carolina. Just bear in mind, because it's all this tropical air, when you get convection, you can easily wind up with 50% or even 100% higher than what the model is, than what the forecast is in this sort of smoothed out look that WPC puts out. You can't pinpoint every single spot. But you could wind up with a thunderstorm that sits overhead for for an hour or so, and suddenly you've got 3 or 4 inches of rain, and you've got some flash flooding. Also, in the upper Mississippi River Valley into central Canada, we're seeing some solid rainfall amounts of up to a few inches on the Canada side, and anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half. The west is nice and dry. So, uh, there's no, Joe, I think you might agree with me with what I'm about to say. I think July has got to be, if you're not a fan of heat and humidity, July has got to be the worst month of the year for you. Because going forward this week, even though we have this upper trough and a weak front coming through tomorrow that's going to set off these thunderstorms, and you see how the European blows up a few bigger cells in western Connecticut and down through New Jersey and over into Delaware. Um, there's no real dry air behind it. So the temperatures might ease a bit later in the week because we're going to have maybe more of an ocean flow, not truly onshore strong flow, but an ocean flow that'll lower the temperatures. But I think we're going to be dealing with 70 plus dew points for the rest of the week, and probably some chances for thunderstorms. Maybe not so much maybe just some scattered stuff around on Wednesday, but becoming a little more numerous on Thursday, scattered again on Friday. And then as we go into the weekend, it's just going to be, very warm to hot and humid and some scattered showers and thunderstorms.
I actually took a shot at suggesting that Saturday and Sunday, we would not have, and Monday of next week too, that we would just have the heat and humidity. And I actually was brave enough to leave out, and I may change my mind and put it back in tomorrow, but for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I just have heat and humidity and intervals of sun and clouds. I did not mention any thunderstorm threat for any of those days. But up until then, up until Friday, I've got showers and storms. And the thing that is really going to drive you crazy, Joe, is that with the front positioned where it is, right across the region, right across our area through the next few days, any place near or along that frontal line will certainly be sufficient in the afternoon and evening. with diurnal heating to produce, locally heavy downpours and maybe a few locally gusty thunderstorms as well.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at the next couple of weeks. Just trying, there is some semblance. The models were trying to show the upper flow getting a little more northwest this week, but it's sort of backed off on it. There's more ridging in the east than than previously forecast. And we're going through mid-month. We you know nah, I really don't. I mean, there's no real push of troughing coming down from Canada. It looks like Canada, you got to be up up near the border of the U.S. and Canada in order to get into some kind of Canadian air. But it looks like we're gonna be in a stretch here of very warm to hot and humid conditions, and eventually the models do build up. I mean, late in the forecast period, it looks like they build up a big ridge in the Central Plains. This would be around after July 19th or 20th, which would probably see some really hot temperatures if this upper air that I got on the screen now winds up verifying in the Central Plains, and we're sort of on the edge of that. So, um, yeah, I just this is July to me is always one of those months where you just look at the upper air and you sort of pray for something to come down to Canada to give you a break for a day or two, but it never does seem to happen.
Yep, and you and I can remember many summers in the 1970s where we had what Gordon Barnes, the meteorologist on Channel 2 and CBS News Radio, used to say we're in a stagnant weather pattern, Ben, and we're going to be staying in this pattern for a good number of days to come. And that indeed looks to be the case. We go all the way out in some of these models 360 hours, and even at 360 hours, you really don't see anything that seems to suggest that we might have some kind of a trough or some kind of a change in the pattern to drop some cooler and drier air in here from Canada. So this could turn out to be really overall a rather warm, if not downright hot, and humid month of July 2025.
Steve Lapointe banged the tip jar tonight. Thank you, Steve. And yes, if you like the show, hit the like button because we love it when you hit the like button. Um, I guess everybody was coming back from the holiday weekend, wanted to catch up on whatever weather that they thought they were going to, what we're looking forward to this week because we got more of a sizable audience tonight than we normally do, which
Richard
is
Bond,
nice.
Richard,
Which is
Richard Bond is asking, can you please explain how the river could rise 24 feet in 1 hour? And, I don't know the topography of the Guadalupe River, but if you have just the right type of topography, and if you have something like what we had here last week for 15 or 20 minutes, where it was coming down at the rate of, 6 and 8 inches an hour, and that was what was happening in Texas early on
that is
4th of July
Texas.
morning.
That's known as Texas Hill Country. There's a
Exactly.
lot of hills there, so you get these setups where you get an east wind off the Gulf, and of course you have the tropical moisture left over from Tropical Storm Barry, and you get the moisture comes in off the Gulf, and you get the updrafts that go up on those mountains. It pours rain. I mean, it's not inconceivable if you're talking about mega inches of rain in a short period of time that you're going to have, you're basically going to have this wall of water cascading down into the valleys, and I mean, it does, it is, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Um, it is formidable, I guess, or imposing as far as seeing a wall of water come down so quickly. And you can't run away. I saw somebody had some videos of people that were like running as the water was coming down. And I mean, as all water's flowing downhill, they can't run fast enough. It just doesn't, you're not going to beat it.
That's what I said at the beginning of our show tonight. I said, even if you were to be awakened by a weather alert from your weather radio, unless you literally were out the door immediately after you heard that warning, you're probably not going to make it because the water levels were rising so incredibly fast. I don't know what you could do about something like that. By
No.
the way, Joe, I did bring here's my NOAA weather radio, and it is one of the weather radios. Some people have a weather radio attached to their AM and FM radio, and it simply can press a button and they can get the weather. But this is designed specifically, this radio, to give you an alert. Um, I don't know how well, and I usually don't have it in this room, so you really can't pick up uh, KW035 or Albany. But what I can do is I can demonstrate to you the alarm. Let me see if I can get it here. Now, if that doesn't wake you up, if
Nothing
that
will.
doesn't wake, if that doesn't wake, if you have this in your bedroom and that goes off, if that doesn't wake you up, I don't know what won't. And again, this supersedes cell phones. If you don't have signals, and a lot of people said that cell phone activity along that Guadalupe River was spotty at best, and in some cases non-existent. But a weather radio, a NOAA weather radio, that will get through, and that will light up and signal you if indeed they send out a special statement or special warning, especially so on a case like what we had last week at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's really what they should have and use for future events.
Right. And Mrs. Rayo on the chat board makes a very good point about the fact that it runs wet and dry there. When it gets dry there, it gets really dry and the ground gets baked like cement. And that was probably a big player too because the water didn't get absorbed. It just basically ran off and just kept running off.
Right.
So yeah, and that's just kind of the nature of what the kind of weather that they have in that part of Texas. It can be brutally dry for long periods of time, and then you get these tropical, these setups where you get tropical moisture or you get the remnants of a tropical system that come in, and all of a sudden you get 15 inches of rain. So, this sort of stuff that's really just it's very sad. It just really is sad and tragic. Um, but I'm sure we're going to be finding out more going forward. Anyway, I think
There'll
we're
be many.
done.
There'll be many technical papers that'll be published in BAMS, the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society. I'm sure in the next year or two as to what happened, what went wrong, and methodologies as to how they can correct that. Yeah, a lot of people are going to be looking at this, discussing and seeing what happened and what they can do to rectify the situation for future similar weather events.
All right. I guess we can wrap it up. An interesting Monday for sure. And Joe and I will be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. So by all means, join us. And thank you very much, those of you who hit the tip jar tonight. It was Brandon Doherty, Steve Lapointe, and T. Snowy. Thank you very much for your generosity. Most appreciated. And don't forget to shop our referral link on Amazon that's pinned to the top of the chat board. So we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Bye
Good
bye.
night, folks. Good night, folks.